Chosen one, listen carefully because more tears are coming. Do not let fear decide what those words mean before you hear this whole message. You have already cried enough to know the difference between a passing emotion and a season that reaches deep into your spirit. This is not a warning that more destruction is waiting for you. You know the tears I am talking about, the ones that came when nobody was around, the ones you wiped away before opening the door, the ones you swallowed because someone else needed you to stay strong. And while everyone assumed you were handling everything, you were asking God how much longer you could carry what no one else could see. You kept moving and answered messages when people called, and you showed up even when your own heart needed rest. You became the person who could solve problems, calm tension, and hold everyone together. But there were nights when you had nothing left to give, and even then you were more worried about disappointing others than admitting how tired your own heart had become. Some of you learned how to cry without making a sound, and you would sit in the dark while one question circled through your mind. God, did any of this suffering truly matter? You never wanted applause for surviving what hurt. You never needed anyone to admire your endurance. You only wanted to know that the pain had not been wasted and that heaven had not forgotten your name. That question stayed with you as days became weeks and then became months. You watched other people celebrate doors opening while your own life remained strangely quiet. And because the answer did not arrive when you thought it should, you started wondering whether your tears were proof that nothing was changing at all. Chosen one, that is the first lie this message must break, because silence from heaven is not the same as abandonment. A painful delay is not the same as rejection. And the fact that you had to keep walking without visible proof does not mean that nothing was forming beneath the surface. Some things become strongest where nobody can see them growing. During that season, your sensitivity became impossible to ignore. You noticed the atmosphere in a room before anyone spoke, and you could feel when words did not match intentions. Certain conversations changed because your spirit could no longer tolerate what once seemed normal. And the more clearly you saw people, the more often you wanted to be alone. That new isolation confused you more than you admitted. You had always been available to almost everyone. You were the one they called when plans fell apart, and you absorbed emotions that were never yours to keep. Then one day, something inside you finally changed. You still cared, but your spirit resisted becoming an endless emotional shelter for everyone else. But what if your heart was not becoming colder? What if your spiritual discernment was becoming much sharper? There is a difference between closing your heart and finally understanding that love does not require you to bleed every time someone refuses to heal. And that brings us back to the tears. Because the tears you already cried belonged to a version of you that was surviving. They came from carrying too much, explaining too much, forgiving too quickly, and waiting too long for people to become what they kept promising they would become. Those tears had a language, even when you had no words. But the tears ahead are connected to another question. What if your next tears come because nothing more is being taken from you? What if your body is finally releasing what your spirit no longer needs to carry? I am not closing that answer yet, because there is something you must understand before those words can land with their full weight. Look at what happened to you in silence. You became harder to manipulate and less impressed by promises, and you noticed repeated patterns instead of accepting familiar excuses. You stopped believing every apology just because it sounded emotional. And even though that growth cost you comfort, it also gave you a level of clarity you did not have before. That is why some relationships started feeling different. The behavior that once kept you confused became obvious, and people who pulled you back with emotional speeches lost that access. You did not become cruel, you became fully awake, and awakening often feels lonely before it feels powerful. You realized you could survive days you once believed would destroy you, and that silence could protect you better than another argument. You discovered that walking away could protect more peace than winning ever did. That realization changed something deep inside your inner world. Still, there was one part of you waiting for visible evidence. You wanted visible proof that the suffering had produced something greater than endurance. You wanted to know that one day you would look back and understand why the road had been so painfully long. This is where the message becomes very personal. Your deepest fear is not that you will cry again. You already know that you can survive another night of tears. Your deepest fear is that you will cry again for the same reason. You fear repeating the same lesson, meeting the same kind of person, carrying the same disappointment, and calling it growth. But there is a reason your spirit has become more alert lately. There is a reason certain conversations drain you faster, and there is a reason you notice what you once ignored. You are not being prepared to repeat the old cycle with more patience. You are being prepared to recognize that cycle before it can close around your life again. This is the work of a spiritual intercessor who is learning boundaries. You were never called to rescue everyone who entered your life. Some people entered your life as lessons, and others became mirrors. Some assignments ended long before you gave yourself permission to release them. And yes, that realization can make you cry too. Not because you want those people back, but because you finally see how long you abandoned your own peace to keep other people comfortable. You remember making yourself smaller so someone else would not feel threatened. Those memories can still feel heavy, but they are not pulling you backward. They are showing you the distance between who you were and who you are becoming. Every true testimony needs a clear before and a clear after. And right now, you are standing close enough to the turning point to feel both versions of yourself at once. Before we go deeper, quietly mark this important moment. If you survived a season nobody understood, type, "I am still here" below. Do not write it for attention or approval. Do it as a quiet marker that the season did not erase you. You are still here, and that matters more than anyone who expected your pain to silence you. Now stay close to this message for one more moment. There is another layer beneath all of this. The tears you fear are not the tears you think they are. But before you can understand the tears that are coming, you need to understand why the tears you already cried were never wasted. Chosen one, the tears you already cried were not empty. They carried information your mind could not name at the time. They showed you where your limits had been crossed, where your peace had been traded away, and where your spirit had been asking for change long before your circumstances finally caught up. At first, you thought crying meant you were losing control. You thought strength meant staying composed, no matter what happened around you. But there is another kind of strength that appears when you stop pretending nothing hurts. Sometimes the first sign of healing is not silence. Sometimes it is finally feeling what you were too busy surviving to feel. That is why the meaning of tears has to change here. Some tears come from depletion, some come from release, and some come when your heart finally recognizes that the chapter you begged to escape is no longer the chapter you are living. Those are not the same tears, and confusing them keeps many people afraid of their own breakthrough. But release has a different feeling. It does not always arrive with celebration. Sometimes it begins quietly, when you realize you no longer want what once had power over you. You notice that the apology you used to wait for is no longer necessary. You notice that your peace has become more valuable than being understood by everyone. And there is a reason I am naming something earlier than you might expect. I do not want to hide a practical tool behind mystery and wait until the end just to surprise you with it. What we are discussing about mental noise, emotional overload, and lost clarity has a connection to a specific kind of brain activity that researchers have studied for years. There is a simple audio tool created around that idea. It is called the Genius Song. Dr. Robert Lake, developed it as a 7-minute brain entrainment track designed to support gamma activity. The state, often associated with focused attention, pattern recognition, and moments of unusually clear insight. You do not need to make a decision about it right now. If something in you already wants to explore it, the original source is in the description and pinned comment. If you want the full context first, stay with this message, because the deeper point is not the tool itself. The deeper point is why your clarity became so difficult to access in the first place. Now come back to your own story. Emotional survival trains the mind to scan for what might go wrong next. Even after the danger passes, part of you can remain on watch. You walk into a peaceful room and still feel tension. You receive kindness and still wonder when the hidden condition will appear. That does not mean your discernment is broken. It means discernment and fear have been standing too close together for too long. One helps you recognize truth. The other makes every unfamiliar moment feel dangerous. Your next season requires you to learn the difference without shutting down the sensitivity that has protected you for years. This is where your identity begins to change. You are not meant to remain an emotional sponge for every person who enters your life. You are not required to absorb every mood, every crisis, and every unspoken expectation around you. A spiritual intercessor can care deeply without carrying what was never assigned to them. For a long time, you confused compassion with responsibility. If someone was hurting, you felt obligated to fix it. If someone was disappointed, you assumed you had done something wrong. If a room felt tense, you immediately searched yourself for the problem. That habit made you useful to many people, but it made your own inner world unbearably crowded. Now you are learning another way. You can notice pain without taking ownership of it. You can love someone without becoming their rescue plan. You can hear disappointment without abandoning your own boundaries. And you can walk away from a cycle without needing everyone involved to agree that the cycle was harmful. And yes, this kind of change can bring tears too. You may grieve the years you spent trying to earn what should have been given freely. You may cry for the younger version of yourself who thought love had to be proven through exhaustion. But even that grief can become sacred when it stops pulling you backward and starts teaching you what never to abandon again. Chosen one, there is another reason this matters. A testimony is not created only by what happened to you. It is also created by what happened inside you, while nobody was watching. The stronger boundaries, the sharper discernment, the quieter confidence, and the ability to recognize patterns are part of the answer you kept asking heaven to send. You were waiting for the outside world to change first, but much of the preparation began inside your reactions. You stopped chasing closure from people who could not offer it. You stopped mistaking intensity for connection. You started noticing that peace felt unfamiliar only because chaos had been familiar for so long. This is one reason delay can feel so confusing. You may have prayed for change and then wondered why the answer seemed slow. But what if the delay was not about convincing God to move? What if part of the delay was the time required for your inner world to become able to hold what you were asking for without recreating the old pattern? Think about that carefully. If the same opportunity had arrived when you still confused chaos with love, you might have carried old habits into a new room. If the same relationship had appeared while you still believed boundaries were selfish, you might have abandoned yourself again. Timing can protect what desire alone cannot protect. This does not mean every painful delay was necessary. It means delay can still produce wisdom. When you refuse to waste what it taught you, you learned what your peace costs. You learned what access to your heart should require. You learned that repeated apologies without changed behavior are not restoration. And now, another question opens. Why did it take so long for the answer to feel visible? if so much was already changing inside you? Why did heaven seem quiet while your identity was being rebuilt in places nobody could see? The answer becomes clearer when you look at the pattern that appears again and again in the lives of people who carried more than their current circumstances could explain. Before we enter that pattern, remember this: the next tiers are not being introduced as punishment. They are connected to recognition. You are getting closer to the moment when the meaning of what happened begins to reverse, and what once looked like evidence of delay starts becoming evidence that something deeper was being formed. Stay with me now, because the delay will make more sense when you see what happened to people who were hidden before they were trusted with something larger. Their stories did not become testimonies because pain disappeared quickly. Their stories became testimonies because the meaning of the waiting changed when the full pattern was finally revealed. Chosen one, there is a reason the waiting felt longer than it should have. You were looking for movement where your eyes could see it, but much of the formation was happening where nobody could measure it. That pattern is not new. It appears again and again in the lives of people who were hidden before their purpose became visible. Think about David. He was anointed before he was established. He carried a promise long before he carried the position connected to that promise. There were seasons when the distance between what had been spoken and what could be seen must have felt enormous. Yet the hidden years were not empty. They trained his courage, his restraint, and his ability to recognize the difference between impulse and assignment. That matters for you because delay can make a person question everything. You start wondering if you misunderstood the promise. You wonder if you missed a sign, made a wrong turn, or somehow became disqualified. But hidden formation often feels like contradiction before it looks like preparation. The outside can remain quiet, while the inside becomes strong enough to hold what comes next. Joseph lived that kind of contradiction too. He carried a vision of elevation, then walked through years that looked nothing like elevation. His circumstances seemed to move in the opposite direction of the promise. Yet each difficult place added something he would later need: discernment, patience, wisdom, and the ability to remain steady while other people reacted from fear. That is the part many people miss. Testimony is not only the moment the door opens. Testimony is also the person you had to become before you could walk through that door without losing yourself. You were asking for an answer, but heaven was also shaping the one who would be able to live inside that answer with clarity. Look at your own story. You are more careful with your attention now. You notice what drains you. You recognize when a familiar pattern is trying to wear a new face. You no longer confuse every strong feeling with divine direction, because you have learned that peace can be quiet and still be powerful. That change did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened through repeated choices that nobody applauded. You stopped returning to conversations that always left you empty. You let certain explanations remain unfinished. You allowed some people to misunderstand you because protecting your peace became more important than managing their opinion. This is why your old tears cannot be judged only by how painful they felt. Some of them were marking the end of agreements you did not know you had made. Agreements to overgive, agreements to stay silent, agreements to keep proving your goodness to people who had already decided to misunderstand it. Hold that thought, because this is where another layer begins to open. What you call mental fog is not always a lack of intelligence. Sometimes it appears after long periods of emotional overload, when too many signals compete for your attention at the same time. Your mind keeps scanning, compare it, remembering and predicting, even when your spirit is asking for stillness. Researchers have studied brain states connected with focused attention, pattern recognition, and moments of unusual clarity. Gamma activity is often discussed in that conversation. The deeper point for you is simple. A mind that has spent years reacting to noise can forget what clear focus feels like. even when the ability for that focus was never truly gone. That is why the idea of restoration matters more than the idea of becoming someone new. You are not trying to manufacture a different identity. You are learning to recover access to parts of yourself that survival pushed into the background. The discernment was there. The creativity was there. The capacity to recognize patterns was there. Dr. Robert Lake built his work around that kind of restoration. His research did not begin from the idea that people were empty and needed something artificial added to them. The larger framework treats clarity as something that can be supported through a sequence of practices and tools, with gamma-related work appearing as one part of that broader picture. But do not lose the spiritual point inside the science. The tool is not the testimony. The frequency is not the testimony. The testimony is what becomes possible when confusion no longer controls every decision, and when you can finally hear your own inner clarity without the old season shouting over it. If this is giving language to something you survived in silence, share this message with one person who has been carrying more than they admit. Do not send it to prove anything. Send it because sometimes one clear sentence reaches someone at the exact moment they are ready to stop calling their exhaustion normal. Now go deeper with me. You have been asking why the answer seemed delayed if so much was already changing inside you. One reason is that inner change becomes visible only after it has been repeated enough to become a new pattern. A single boundary can be a reaction. Repeated boundaries become identity. That is when the old cycle begins losing power, not because every difficult person disappears, but because the same behavior no longer produces the same response in you. What once pulled you into hours of explanation may now receive silence. What once made you question your worth may now simply reveal who still has access to the old version of you. And here is where the delay starts making sense. The answer was not only waiting for the right external moment, part of the answer was waiting for your response to change. Not because you were being punished, and not because you failed, because receiving something new while repeating an old pattern can turn a blessing into another version of the same lesson. This is what hidden formation produced. It produced a person who can pause before reacting. It produced a person who can feel deeply without becoming responsible for every feeling in the room. It produced a person who can love without surrendering discernment. But there is still one obstacle that can follow you into the next chapter. It is subtle because it learned how to sound like wisdom. After enough disappointment, survival begins to whisper that every good thing has a hidden cost. It tells you not to relax, not to trust peace, and not to celebrate too early. That voice can make release feel suspicious. It can make kindness feel temporary. It can make a quiet season feel like the silence before another storm. And if you do not recognize that pattern, you can stand inside an answered prayer while emotionally preparing for the next wound. This is the hidden blocker we need to confront next. What if the breakthrough begins, but your identity is still waiting for pain? What if heaven opens a door, but the old version of you keeps searching the room for the trap? That is why the meaning of your tears must change before the next part of your story can fully open. The words "more tears are coming" are about to stop sounding like a threat. You have seen what the waiting produced. And in the next part, you are going to understand why the tears that come with release can feel just as powerful as the tears that came with survival. Chosen one, this is the moment when the warning changes meaning. More tears are coming, but not because heaven is preparing another wound, not because your life is about to collapse again. The old version of you learned to hear emotional intensity and immediately expect danger, but that reaction belongs to a season that trained you to survive. You have been scanning every peaceful moment for the next interruption. You have been waiting for the hidden cost inside good news, even when something kind arrives. part of you asks how long it will last. That is what repeated disappointment can teach the nervous system, and that is why peace can feel unfamiliar before it begins to feel safe. But unfamiliar does not mean dangerous. Quiet does not mean something terrible is approaching. A closed door does not always mean rejection, and tears do not always mean loss. Your survival identity became skilled at protecting you, but now it can misread release as another threat if you never teach it a new meaning. Remember the question from the beginning. Why would more tears be coming after you have already cried enough? The answer is not that heaven ignored your pain and decided you needed more. The answer is that powerful emotion returns when meaning changes, and sometimes the body releases tears when the spirit finally recognizes that the battle has ended. You have already changed more than you realize. You pause where you once reacted. You observe where you once chased. You let silence answer questions that once consumed your whole day. And when someone shows you a pattern that used to confuse you, you do not need 10 more examples before you believe what you are seeing. Listen closely. The next chapter does not require you to become less discerning. It requires you to stop confusing discernment with fear. Discernment notices what is true. Fear invents danger before truth appears. One gives you clarity, and the other keeps your body loyal to a battle that may already be over. Chosen one, you are not being asked to become careless. You are being asked to recognize when protection has turned into expectation. There is a difference. You can keep wisdom without carrying dread. You can remember the lesson without reliving the wound. You can honor what happened without letting it become a prophecy over everything that comes next. Now remember the tears you cried in private. Remember the nights when you asked why nothing seemed to change. Remember the mornings when you carried yourself through another day without visible evidence. Those tears belong to the question, why is this happening to me? The tears ahead belong to another question entirely. That is the first false summit. You may think the answer is simply healing. You may think more tears means you will finally release the old pain and move on. That is part of it, but it is not the deepest layer. Healing is powerful, but recognition goes even further. Recognition is the moment when the story changes meaning. You look at what once felt like evidence that you were forgotten, and suddenly you can see what it formed in you. You notice the boundaries, the discernment, the patience, the courage, and the ability to walk away from what once had control over your emotions. So hear this carefully. God did not say more pain is coming. The message is that your story is approaching a point where what once broke your heart can finally be seen from the other side. The tears that come with that recognition are not proof of another collapse. They are evidence that meaning has changed. The old tears asked for survival. The new tears answer with release. The old tears came with confusion. The new tears come with recognition. The old tears were hidden inside a private battle. The new tears become part of a testimony because you can finally tell the story without becoming the same person who lived inside it. This is the climax you were being prepared to understand. Your tears were never the final evidence. They were part of the transition. They marked where the old identity was being exhausted, where false responsibilities were being released, and where your spirit was learning to separate compassion from self-abandonment. Now, let the message settle for a moment. What happened to you was real. What it taught you was real. What changed inside you is real. And what comes next requires you to stop dragging the mental noise of the old season into a chapter that needs a clearer mind. This is where the earlier conversation about gamma begins to matter again. I mentioned a tool before because I did not want to hide it behind a dramatic reveal. But now, you understand the problem more clearly. Emotional overload can leave the mind crowded, reactive, and unable to access the calm focus that your next decisions require. Chosen ones often notice this gap more intensely because they remember what clarity used to feel like. They remember learning quickly. They remember strong intuition. They remember moments when ideas seemed to connect without effort. Then years of stress, noise, and constant emotional responsibility made that inner access feel more distant. The point is not that something sacred was removed from you forever. The point is that access can become harder when your mind spends too long in survival patterns. That is why restoration matters. You are not trying to become someone artificial. You are trying to support the clarity that already belongs to the person you were created to become. Dr. Robert Lake spent decades studying this kind of brain activity and the way focus states can be supported through brain entrainment. The research around gamma has been discussed in major academic environments, including institutions such as MIT and Princeton. The important idea is not a miracle claim. It is the possibility of supporting a brain state linked with focus and pattern recognition. Remember what I named earlier. The Genius song was created as a 7-minute audio track built around that idea. This is not the full explanation yet, and I am not asking you to make a decision in the middle of an emotional moment. I want you to understand why the tool belongs in this conversation before we talk about what it includes. Because meaning alone is not enough. If your mind keeps replaying the noise of the old chapter, you now know what the tears mean. The final question is how you stop carrying yesterday into tomorrow and how you support the clarity needed to live like the person your testimony says you have become. Chosen one. Now we finish what was opened earlier. You understand the meaning of the tears, and you have seen why clarity matters when an old season loses its authority. The next step is not about forcing a miracle. It is about giving your mind a cleaner place to stand while your new identity becomes more familiar than the survival pattern you carried for years. Some people hear about a tool like this and think, I have already tried enough things. That reaction makes sense. Disappointment teaches intelligent people to question promises. Meditation and other practices often ask the mind to change itself from the inside, while brain entrainment is designed to provide an external rhythm that may support a different pattern of brain activity. 7 minutes can sound too simple, but simple does not mean meaningless. The purpose is not to replace your faith or wisdom. It is to support focused attention when old mental noise becomes loud. There is also the practical question of money, and that deserves respect. $39 is not nothing to everyone. Hear the full structure before deciding whether this belongs in your next step. The original price of the Genius song is $49. Through the source connected to this message, the current access price is $39 as a one-time purchase, with no subscription. It also includes 4 digital bonuses with a combined listed value of $80. Those bonuses include a short audio for children, a classic book, a guided visualization, and a 5-habit infographic. The point is not to overwhelm you, it is to offer different forms of support. The product material also describes a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you try it and decide it does not fit you, you can request a refund and still keep the 4 bonuses. A decision should not feel like a trap, especially for someone who has spent years feeling trapped by pressure. There is also a reason I am specific about where you find it. Imitation audio files use similar names online, and the product material warns that those copies may not contain the same brain entrainment structure. The original source is the one linked in the description and pinned comment. The product material lists more than 18,366 users and a refund rate below 4%. Those numbers do not predict your experience, but they give useful context. Now pause for one quiet moment. Put one hand over your heart if that feels natural. Do not make this a money decision first. Ask a deeper question. Am I willing to support the clarity I keep asking for? And am I willing to stop carrying the old noise as if it still owns me? If your answer is yes, the original source for the genius song is in the description and pinned comment. You do not need to rush. You only need to decide whether this tool fits the person you are becoming, not the person who learned to expect another wound. And if your answer is no, stay with the truth you have already received. The most important revelation was never a product. It was the change in meaning. You are not standing at the beginning of the same story again. You are standing where your relationship with that story changes. This is where the future begins to look different. Not because every problem disappears overnight, but because you stop meeting every new day with the emotional posture of the old one. You begin to notice peace without distrusting it. You allow good news to remain good news. You may remember something that once made you cry, and for the first time the memory does not pull you under. You may speak about what happened without defending yourself. Closure was not another person giving you the right explanation. Closure was the moment their behavior stopped deciding your identity. That is when tears can return in a different form. They may come when you realize you no longer want to go back. They may come when a door opens and you notice you are not afraid to walk through it. They may come when you recognize someone in yourself that you thought the old season had erased. Those are testimony tears. They do not deny what happened. They reveal that what happened no longer has the final word. They are not evidence that you are breaking down again. They are evidence that the meaning has changed. Chosen one, this is your detachment. You no longer need to explain yourself to everyone who benefited from your confusion. You do not need universal agreement before you protect your peace. You can let people misunderstand a boundary they were never willing to respect. This is your clearing. The old emotional contracts are losing their grip. The belief that love requires exhaustion is being released. The habit of scanning every quiet moment for danger is being challenged by a pattern that allows peace to exist without suspicion. This is your accelerated fulfillment. Not a promise that every desire appears instantly, but a shift in how quickly clarity can move you. Once hesitation no longer controls every step. A clear no can save months. A clear yes can open a path that fear once delayed. And this is your generational legacy. Someone after you will not have to learn every lesson through the same pain. Your family, or the people who watch how you live, can inherit a different pattern. They can see that compassion and boundaries can exist together. Now let this declaration become the seal. My tears have a testimony. My waiting was not my identity. My pain does not own my future. My peace is allowed to stay. My discernment is allowed to guide me. My heart can remain soft without becoming available for every burden. I release the need to prove what I survived. I release the need to be understood by everyone. I release the fear that every blessing hides another wound. I choose to recognize the difference between memory and prophecy, because what happened before does not have to repeat. And when tears come again, I will not immediately call them defeat. I will ask what they are revealing. I will remember that release can be emotional, gratitude can be overwhelming, and recognition can make the strongest person cry when they finally see how far they have come. If this is the meaning you are carrying out of this message, type "My tears have a testimony" in the comments. Let those words be a simple marker of agreement with the identity you are choosing. Not because a comment creates the change, but because naming a truth can help you stop hiding from it. Share this with someone who has been strong for too long and may be afraid of what their next tears mean. They may need to hear that more tears do not always mean more pain. Chosen one, you made it through the part of the story that once convinced you it would never end. Now you are learning how to live after survival. The testimony is not only that you endured, the testimony is that you no longer belong to the version of yourself who believed endurance was all life would ever ask from you. So when the tears come, do not panic. Let them come. Let them carry away what no longer needs a home inside you. Let them remind you that your heart is still alive, your discernment is still growing, and your story is still moving. More tears may come, but they are not the same tears, and you are not the same person.